We are a little over halfway done with 2025 so far, and I've heard 29 new albums and EPs from this year. So I think it's time to give my halfway through the year music project of the year rankings. I'm going to be ranking these 2025 albums and EPs based on my personal ratings of these projects. I've only heard 29 so far, so I'm definitely going to be missing some of your favorites, but by the end of this year, this will be full. So if you don't see it on this list, just wait for the next one, where we're going to have so many more albums and EPs from 2025. Let's get into the ranking. At number 29, I have Jump Out by Osama. Jump Out is an 18-track album that he dropped in January of this year. Just like most underground music, it has decent but not amazing production. The choruses are repetitive, and the sound overall is repetitive. Along with the production not being anything special, it is often obnoxious and hard to listen to at times. This also drowns out most of the vocals, so half of this album, the vocals are kind of inaudible. In my opinion, there are no standout tracks, but there are a few tracks on here that are genuinely some of the worst songs I've heard this year. If you like typical regurgitated underground music, you might like this album, but for me, this was forgettable, and I gave Jump Out by Osama a 3.5 out of 10. At number 28, I have Donda 2 by Kanye West. This probably won't be my only Kanye album to be in this regional list by the time end of the year, because once Bully drops, it'll likely be in this area too, but right now, we only have Donda 2, so we're lucky for that. Donda 2 has average production at best. I don't think Kanye has a single memorable verse on this. The choruses are very repetitive on every song. A lot of songs are just nothing burgers. There's maybe one or two tracks that are actually like good in this album, but most of it is just unlistenable garbage. It is a 21 track album where 20 of the tracks are just terrible. It's a little more listenable in my opinion than Jump Out by Osama, but not by much. I gave Donda 2 a 4 out of 10, making it the 28th album on my list. At number 27, I have More Chaos by Ken Carson. I feel this album was a step back from A Great Chaos. The production just feels less unique, less memorable. The production just feels like your typical Opium production. A lot of his choruses weren't memorable. Once again, a lot of repetition in the choruses throughout the songs. This is also a 21 track album where there's not really a standout track. There's some that are better than the others, but a lot of them just fall into the average to bad range. It's nothing special, nothing memorable, and definitely a step back from A Great Chaos. I gave More Chaos by Ken Carson a 4.5 out of 10. At 26, we have our first EP of the list with We Live in a Society by Flume and JPEG Mafia. This was a 4-song EP that released in May. None of the production on all the 4 songs were even enjoyable. I don't think there was a single song on here with enjoyable production, and most of the vocals aren't memorable at all. It's 4 songs of nothing. Definitely disappointing from JPEG here. This is not terrible like the rest of the albums I've listed so far, but it's only 4 songs and we can get one good song in there. So I gave We Live in a Society a 4.5, tying it with Ken Carson's More Chaos. At number 25, we have a real hot take here. I have Music by Playboy Cardi. I think the production was fine. It's not as good as some of the production in his previous albums, but it wasn't terrible. I wasn't a huge fan of some of the features verses on here, especially Kendrick Lamar. I think some of his verses just fell kind of flat. I think the replayability of this album wasn't very large. I haven't turned back to many of these tracks. It's also 34 songs long, which is just way too long for this type of album where the sounds aren't too different. It kind of melds together. If you like Opium style music, you'll definitely like this album. Clearly, this isn't my type of genre, but I gave Music by Playboy Cardi a 5 out of 10, making it the 25th album on this list. Next, we have one of my bigger disappointments of the year with Love Kills by Dro Kenji. I used to love Dro Kenji's sound. I felt it was kind of unique in the space, but this album is just your typical underground music that most non-mainstream rappers are turning to. It's just uninspired, it's unoriginal, it's bland all around. There's 16 songs on this album and not a single one I've returned to or even really cared or remember. It was just a disappointment all around. I expected way better out of Dro Kenji. It still has some Dro Kenji moments, but not enough for me to salvage this album. So I have Love Kills by Dro Kenji at a 5.2 out of 10. Next, we might have my biggest disappointment of the year with The Carter 6 by Lil Wayne. The production was not it. There wasn't a single song with production where I was like, yeah, this is a Lil Wayne song I want to hear. I felt like Lil Wayne's rapping was underwhelming because of this. I feel like if you give better production on this album, it raises it a whole lot, but the production really let it down. The features also weren't good. I don't know if there was a single feature on there where I'm like, yeah, that was a good performance from you guys. It was just 19 songs of disappointment and me asking myself, is Lil Wayne washed? I expected so much better out of him. I expected this to be in my top 5 albums of the year, but I was left very, very, very disappointed. I gave the Carter 6 by Lil Wayne a 6 out of 10, and that's being generous. At 22, we have one of 2 projects that Nardawick has released this year. He released the album Wick, which I have not heard yet, so will not be on this list, but he also released an EP called Hold Off earlier in the year. It's a 6-song EP with decent production, decent rapping, but nothing that really elevates it to a memorable project. It's just 6 songs of just being there. There's a Kodak Black feature that's all right, but even that didn't really elevate the album for me. It's cool, it's fine, it's nothing special. I gave Hold Off by Nardawick a 6 out of 10. At 21, we have one of the first major albums of the year to drop with Wham by Lil Baby. It is a 19-song album and is likely going to be the first out of 3 projects he's released this year. He has The Leaks coming in like 2 weeks from now, and then Dominique is supposed to drop at sometime this year. But this album is heavily carried by features. I don't think Lil Baby has any really standout verses or performances on any of these songs. It is about 10 songs too long, 9 songs too long. The choruses aren't great. The production is fine, but Lil Baby just kind of falls flat on this album. If it wasn't for the features, this album would be much lower on this list. But I gave Wham by Lil Baby a 6 out of 10. At number 20, we have Can't Rush Greatness by Central Cee. It is a British rap album that is 17 songs long that came out early in this year. It has a couple features on it. None of them are very good. It has a couple features on it, but only like one of them are very good. Central Cee has some interesting production on it, but not anything crazy. He has a couple standout verses, but overall his sound is just kind of repetitive throughout the album. It's kind of just a blur to listen to. Not a very good project, but not a terrible project. So I give Can't Rush Greatness by Central Cee a 6.2 out of 10. We have back-to-back EPs at 19 and 18. At 19, we have Nothing's Ever Good Enough 2 by Ian Dior, which is an 8-song EP that came out in February of this year. It has 2 features, one from DC The Don, one from Lil Skies, and they're good but not great. But they're probably one of the better things on this album. The sounds are a little different throughout, but it's still only 8 songs, and none of them are like great or amazing. Ian Dior, it's better than some of the music he's been releasing recently, but it's still not a standout album. I would give Nothing's Ever Good Enough by Ian Dior a 6.8 out of 10. At 18, we have the EP from Coil, What Happened to Forever. This is her EP that came out after her and Trippie Redd split. It's 5 songs, no features. It's teetering on good for me. She has some decent performances here. The production's fine. She has decent emotion throughout. It just doesn't have the standout track or performance or moment that I need it to get it into the 7 range. So What Happened to Forever by Coil is just outside of the good range with a 6.8 out of 10. At 17, we have another disappointment from this year with Jack Boys 2 by the Jack Boys. The production on the Jack Boys 2 was probably the best part about it, but even then the production wasn't amazing. It had a bunch of features, but none of the features really impressed me or moved me in this. Even most of the people in Jack Boys themselves didn't impress me. Most of the core Jack Boys members didn't really move the needle for me. It just felt like a decently sized step down from the first Jack Boys, and it kind of felt more like a Travis Scott album than a Jack Boys album. It didn't really feel as cohesive as the first one did. So it's definitely one of the bigger disappointments of the year, but Jack Boys 2 is still a 7 out of 10 for me. At 16, we have Better Late Than Never by Luke Kell. This album / EP is 10 songs long and it has decent production but good vocals. I think Luke Kell himself gets carried by his vocal performances. If this was just your average vocal performance by a rapper, this album would be much lower. But something about Luke Kell's voice really resonates in my head. So while this isn't like life-changing or even great, it is a good album. All 10 tracks are good, but none of them are great. There's also very little features on it, and the features aren't very memorable. It is a good project, but I can't give it much higher than good. So I'm going to give Better Late Than Never by Luke Kell a 7 out of 10. At 15, we have another EP, this time from Logic with Aquarius III. It is a 5-track EP that released in January. I think the production is pretty good on this. It's only 5 songs, so you can't weight it very heavily. There's like 1 or 2 great songs on this, but the others are just good. It is also, once again, a 5-song EP, so it can't be much higher than this in the sense of just pure substance. And we're lucky to have got this based on what Logic has been dropping recently. This is the last good thing he's dropped this year. So I gave Aquarius 3 by Logic a 7 out of 10. If this had more tracks that kept consistent quality, this might be in the upper 7s range, maybe even low 8 range. But this is only 5-track EP, so it can't be much higher than a 7. At 14, we have another EP, this time from Westside Gunn with Heels Have Eyes. This is a 5-track EP, just like the Logic one. Admittedly, this would be much higher on my list if I liked Westside Gunn's voice, but Westside Gunn's voice just does not do it for me. The rapping is good, the production is good, but I just can't get over his voice. This EP has a couple of standout tracks like Egypt and Einstein Kitchen, and once again, it's only 5 tracks, so it can't be too high, but I do think it is better than the Logic EP, and I would have it higher if I liked Westside Gunn's voice. So for me, I have this at a 7.2, but if you're a fan of Westside Gunn's voice, then you'll definitely like this album way more than I did. At 13, we have another disappointment, I guess. I don't know, I wasn't expecting too much out of this album, with Some Sexy Songs for You by Drake and Party Next Door. It is an R&B album, so it's not technically hip-hop, but it's Drake, so I'm going to put Drake in the list. I think it is overhated. There are definitely some good tracks in here. Nokia is a great track. Give Me a Hug's a great track. CN Tower is a good track. We have Die Trying, which is a great track. It's just too much. It's also too similar sounding at parts, so it kind of drones on. But if you listen to these songs solo, they're going to sound better than they do together. It's definitely an overhated album. Definitely a slight disappointment, but I gave Drake and P&D's Some Sexy Songs for You a 7.3 out of 10, making it the 13th best album of 2025 that I've heard. At 12, we have Excelsior by Benny the Butcher. His first of 2 releases. He just released an album like last month, but I haven't heard that one yet, so it will not be making a list. Excelsior is a 7-track album EP that came out in March. It has a bunch of features, and the features did well. There weren't any standout features, but there also weren't features that did a terrible job. I think Benny the Butcher had good performances on all the songs, and it was just a good, cohesive listen. So I gave Excelsior by Benny the Butcher a 7.4 out of 10. At 11, just outside the top 10, we have an album/EP that's not really hip-hop with Fancy That by Pink Panthers. Even though it's not really hip-hop, I'm going to put it in anyways. It is a 9-song album/EP with no features. There are a couple standout tracks like Illegal, Stateside, Tonight. The production is really enjoyable on this. It really fits Pink Pantheress' voice and her sound, and it's just kind of a cohesive album/EP that I enjoyed listening to thoroughly, making it the 11th album on this list. I gave Fancy That by Pink Panthers a 7.5 out of 10. I know I've said this a lot this video, but next we have another disappointment with Don't Tap the Glass by Tyler the Creator coming in at the 10th spot. I think the retro vibe of the production fit some points, but other times just didn't fit his voice. It was kind of disjointed and made listening kind of hard too. The vocals themselves also weren't Tyler's best. They kind of got drowned out by what was happening in the song. I know he said this himself, but it just didn't feel as cohesive as Tyler albums usually feel. I expected a lot better of an album from him, but it still wasn't terrible, wasn't even average. It was a good album, but I think a lot of us expected a little bit better. But for a surprise drop that none of us were really expecting, I think it was fine. I gave Don't Tap the Glass by Tyler the Creator a 7.5 out of 10. At number 9, we have one of the last 2 EPs on this list with Unreleased by Blast. Now this is a little biased for me because I'm a big Blast guy. His voice just really tickles my brain. So it's only a 4-song EP, so it really shouldn't be this high, but I enjoyed every song on this. I think every song on this EP was great, but I gave it a little knock because it's only 4 songs. But if you're like an R&B/rap vibe, then you're gonna really like Blast, especially this Unreleased Blast EP. So I gave Unreleased by Blast a 7.7 out of 10. At number 8, we have our last EP, which is another bit of bias for me. We have 803 Major Volume 2 by Aaron May. Just like Blast, I'm a big Aaron May guy. So if you aren't that into Aaron May, or you haven't even really heard of Aaron May, you're gonna like this a lot less than I did. But it is a 4-song EP with 4 songs that I come back to very regularly. I think Aaron May's voice fits the production of this EP very well. It's very cohesive. It's very enjoyable to listen to. So even though it's only a 4-song EP, it does make my top 10, and I give 803 Major Volume 2 by Aaron May an 8 out of 10. At number 7, we have the collab album with Larry June, 2 Chainz, and The Alchemist, Life is Beautiful. Life is Beautiful is an 11-song album that came out in February. It has great production. There's no features on this, so it's just the 3 with the production and the vocals, but I think they all do very well in their parts. There's a couple standout tracks in this album like Munyon Canyon, Jean Prouvé, and the title track Life is Beautiful. I just think it's a great album overall. It doesn't quite have the replayability or like the incredible production to raise it up to the amazing or even the upper great tier, but I do think it is a great album. So I gave Life is Beautiful by 2 Chainz, The Alchemist, and Larry June an 8 out of 10. Just outside the top 5, we have the posthumous album by Mac Miller, Balloonerism. Balloonerism is 14 tracks long with 3 features. I think 2 of the features were good. I wasn't a huge fan of the SZA feature, which is odd because I usually love SZA features, but I just didn't feel it on this one. I think it has some of the most interesting production of the albums I've heard so far this year. Mac Miller has some good performances on this. It's a great album, but I feel like the album is a little bit top heavy when it comes to great songs to good songs. So I have to put Balloonerism in the lower great tier, and I gave Balloonerism by Mac Miller an 8. To open up the top 5, we have Glock of Ellie by Key Glock. This was one of the albums I was looking forward to coming into this year. It is 18 songs long, and you kind of have to like Key Glock's style of rapping here if you're going to enjoy this, because it does have a similar sound throughout, but I'm a huge fan of the way Key Glock raps and the way his production is, so I enjoyed all 18 tracks. There wasn't a track that was noticeably worse than the rest, so yes, it's going to all meld together if you're not a huge fan of his sound, but if you are, you're going to really enjoy Glock of Ellie by Key Glock, and I gave it a 8.3 out of 10. At number 4, we have another borderline hip-hop. It's not really hip-hop, but we have Hurry Up Tomorrow by The Weeknd. This was also one of the first major releases of the year. It is a 22-song album that was also accompanied with a movie by The Weeknd. It has a decent amount of features, and I think most of them were pretty good. I think The Weeknd also had great performances on this. The production was really interesting throughout. There's only a few songs productions I didn't like Sao Paulo. I think it is a great album and a great way to end The Weeknd's career. Some songs have some replayability, but others don't. So I only find myself coming back to a couple of the songs on this album. But overall, as I listen, it is cohesive, it is enjoyable, and it is not very boring all around. So I gave Hurry Up Tomorrow by The Weeknd an 8.3 out of 10. At number 3, I have maybe the most talked about album of the year with Let God Sort Them Out by Clips. This is the collab album between Malice and Pusha T. It's 13 songs long and came out in July. It has some of the best production of any of the albums I've heard so far this year. A lot of the rapping performances are just great to amazing throughout this project. I think the biggest negative about this album is some of the features are noticeably worse than Pusha T and Malice are, so it kind of feels like a juxtaposition in the song. Like, I wasn't a huge fan of the Kendrick feature. There was a couple of the Pharrell features I wasn't a huge fan of, but all the features were better. This might be in the low to mid 9 range, but they weren't. So I gave Let God Sort Them Out by Pusha T and Malice an 8.5 out of 10. My number 2 album of the year so far is an album that just came out with Alfredo II by Freddie Gibbs and The Alchemist. It has a lot of similar traits that the Clips album has. Great production, great performances, great cohesive feel. The thing that sets this apart from Let God Sort Them Out is the 3 features it has. Jid has one of the best verses of the year on it. Anderson .Paak is just incredible on the one song he's on, and Larry June is also great. So it's just a step above Let God Sort Them Out for me, just because the features are more quality, more enjoyable in my opinion. So I gave Alfredo II by Freddie Gibbs and The Alchemist an 8.7 out of 10. And my favorite album of the year so far is Melody of a Memory by Im Triplin. It is a 13-song album that came out in February of this year. It only has one feature, which is Ty Dolla $ign, but I think Ty Dolla $ign does very great on the song he is on. I really enjoy Im Triplin's sound. It's kind of unique and fresh in the space of non-mainstream music. Each track has a good amount of replayability. They all sound just different enough where you can not get bored listening to it, but it still has an Im Triplin feel to it. It is just a very great album from Im Triplin, one of my favorite rappers right now, maybe one of the most underrated rappers right now. So I gave Melody of a Memory by Im Triplin an 8.8 out of 10, making it my favorite album of the year so far. That was my halfway through the year music project of the year ranking. I've only heard 29, so it's not the biggest ranking you've probably seen, but I think I had a quality enough list to make this video so far. If you agree with my rankings or even disagree with them, drop your opinion in the comments, put your own list in the comments, and make sure you like and subscribe for more music content just like this one. I would give you the world, baby girl, you just gotta be worth it.